Listen to the All in My Head podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Please, allow me to show you something.
Welcome back to the All in My Head podcast. I'm Jenny, and I am your host. And welcome back. Like I said, this is episode 7. I can't believe we're into episode 7 already of season 1. This has been quite a journey. So let's get started and talk about what this episode is about. Episode 7 is called My Season of Yes. And I originally started talking about this season of yes coming into my 50th year of life. But retrospectively, when I look back, I think this started probably when I turned 45. I actually think it started then. And it was something as simple as saying yes to something that I was nervous about, that stretched me out of my comfort zone, and that maybe I wouldn't normally have done. I find a lot of inspiration in my children. I've talked about this before. My 3 boys are pretty inspiring to me, and they inspire me every day to do brave things. They're just pretty fearless. They are adventurous. They do things that I would never do. I mean, part of that is, being boys, they like to do wild things and stretch, outside their comfort zones and be dangerous. And I talked about how I was kind of afraid of everything growing up. Everything kind of scared me. So in my season of yes, I decided that, life is too short. I think we all get to that point where we start thinking life is too short. And I just wanted to do things and try things and step into things that maybe were out of my comfort zone, that maybe I was nervous about, that maybe, again, because of my upbringing, I wouldn't normally have tried or done. And so I say that it started when I was 45 because that's when I got my first tattoo. And I had thought about it for probably 15 years. At that point, my boys all had tattoos. My youngest doesn't have tattoos, I should say that. He will probably never get tattoos. But I had wanted one to kind of honor them. I always say to them, I love you to the moon and back. And so my first tattoo was a pretty sizable tattoo on my thigh of the sun and the moon, kind of the sun and moon face, and then their names around it. And that was probably the first thing that I really feel like I said yes to, and that kind of seasoned me and helped to propel me into this season of yes. And I say that because in 2019, I would say that we made the biggest decision and biggest move of our lives, and we moved and sold our house in Connecticut and moved to the beach because that was always our dream and this is where we've wanted to be. And, we moved to South Carolina to be close to the water. And we decided collectively, my husband and I, and you heard our podcast together episode, The Marriage Chronicles, but it was something that we decided together. It was time, and it was time to stop putting things off and not be afraid to do the things that we dream about. So again, I think even though I've said to people that in my 50th year, I really came into the season of yes, it was certainly before then. So I would say that the move to South Carolina was a huge move for us. And that was a big step into my season of yes. And, shortly thereafter, we had the pandemic. And we were home and we were doing what everyone does, streaming all the shows and binging all the shows and making all the foods, which was great and wonderful. But I also started to get online and find things that I wanted to get involved in. And that is, when I started attending this women's group, Her Sacred Circle. And I talked a little bit about that in the episode called Jesus and Buddha and crystals, oh my. And that was something that I was anxious to do, or anxious about doing, I should say. Because again, it stretched me out of my comfort zone and something that I wasn't, necessarily comfortable with. I have those sister wounds, and, we'll talk in future episodes about that. And that was a big stepping stone into my season of yes, and being able to give myself the things that I needed and wanted out of my life. And slowly that opened me up to other aspects of saying yes. I took a part-time job that was online and that I was able to do from my home, which I was super grateful for at the time. But that was something that I was anxious about saying yes to as well, because I'm an in-person kind of worker. I have worked with students in the past. I've worked in school systems. I've worked for nonprofits, but everything's been hands-on. And we know that the pandemic changed that for everyone in a lot of ways, and that Zoom and online programs became a huge norm. But for me, it was super uncomfortable because I'm not a tech savvy person. Even doing this podcast has been a learning process for me. I am not great with tech, and maybe that's just my age. I'm getting better, I will say, and I will try, and I will do things and attempt things because I feel like I need to learn, and I feel like the process of learning is huge, and it's part of what we need to do to grow. So that was super uncomfortable for me. I had to learn aspects of technology and editing and posting and editing videos and creating portfolios and things that I was not comfortable in normally doing. But I had said to myself that just because it scares me it's not going to stop me. I'm going to take that as a sign that I'm supposed to say yes to that. And I'm grateful that I did, because I think that helped me launch this podcast. It helped me to be more comfortable in an area that I'm uncomfortable in, which then leads me to starting my podcast. That is something that I have thought about for at least 5 years, 6 maybe, and it could even be longer than that. I remember talking about it. I remember putting it all together in my mind and what I wanted it to look like. And it did take me longer than I expected to do it, but also I feel like everything comes in its rightful time. And so learning different aspects of technology, being able to bounce ideas off of my youngest son, who is an actor and who does a lot of things online and is always creating. And he helped to connect me to people who were able to get me on that path. He was the person who helped me find the editor who edits these podcasts, and I'm super grateful for that. But had I had said no, and had I not felt comfortable with it, we wouldn't be here today. So that's another thing that I felt like was part of my season of yes. And in that, I also took a lot of classes online. I was, again, grateful for this job that I had that allowed me to step into classes that I normally would not have access to, but also maybe not felt as comfortable doing. So I signed up for my first Reiki class where, we were kind of certified into the level 1 Reiki. And I just want to say that was a super cool experience. I got so much out of those classes, and the Reiki godmothers, as we call them, were and are just very knowledgeable and very empathetic and very in tune with kind of the nervousness of stepping into that, but also just very forthcoming with their knowledge and their experience and what they hoped we would get out of that course. And to piggyback off of that, they offered a psychic development course, which I've talked about with my kids and other people. And I think we all have psychic abilities. And I think we can all see things and feel things that are happening around us, but it's about staying in tune with that and that was another course that I probably would have never taken and would have been super nervous about taking because of my upbringing and the fact that that wasn't really something we talked about. It was more the aspects of religion that were instilled, but it led me into saying yes to things that were uncomfortable in my mind, but were so great when I finally got to step into it. And I'm so grateful that I had those opportunities to take that. I, in this time, decided to really take my mental health seriously as well and step into therapy more fully and take that on and have that as an extension of my healing. And I say that that's part of my season of yes because I felt like I was finally saying yes to something that I know I needed, and that it was time for me to put myself first. I think that that's what all these things have in common, is putting myself first and filling up my cup with the things that make me happy. And kind of that's what a season of yes is about. It's about, yes, saying things to the things that scare you and that might stretch you in a way, but also saying yes to what's going to help you and heal you and propel you into your next level of life. And I also, would say yes to things that I would never normally even be, I would say, interested in. Our youngest son is an actor. His girlfriend is an actor. They live their best lives in Atlanta and are working on a ton of their own personal projects and working and living and are immersed in that community. And I think I thought I knew what acting was about. I think I thought I knew what that life was about. And a good friend who actually happens to be my son and his girlfriend's former professor from college, kind of texted me one day, and she knew I was in this season of yes and saying yes to things that I wouldn't normally say yes to. So I think that that's how she got me. And she said, I know some people and they're doing a movie locally and they need a woman, a Latina woman who's a little bit older to play the part of Cora. And I honestly think I only thought about it for a couple minutes and I said yes to it. And it scared me, but it also intrigued me in the biggest way, because I was like, wow, I'm going to get to see what my son and his girlfriend do firsthand. And I'm going to be able to immerse myself in something that I would never have done before. And let me just say, when I say a small part, it was a very small part. There was no speaking in it. It was just kind of show up, get dressed up, and, just kind of be in the background. But just that little part was such a huge awakening to me. It was so eye-opening to me because the hours that are spent on putting a short film together and the time that it takes and the production that it takes, I never realized how big it all is. And I say that because when I would get my call times, I could be sitting there for hours and you're just sitting and you're waiting. And also I remember getting told that my call time was 2 a.m. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do 2 a.m., which they in turn, I think, changed to midnight. But we were still there until 4:30 in the morning, and we had to be there at 10. And just to watch what happens on set and to see how many people pour their hearts into something that they love and that they're passionate about and that they really want to do was amazing to me. I loved watching it. And I'm not going to lie, it was pretty cool to hear the powers that be on their walkies saying flying in Cora for her scene, and then at the end when my portions of the movie were done for, the writer and director of the movie, the one who put this all together, the creator, to say, all right, everyone, let's give it up for Cora. This is her final scene. give it up for Cora. And everyone stood up and clapped for me. It was pretty phenomenal. I'm not going to lie. And it was fun, but it was exhausting. And I saw these young people, because most of the people in this movie were teenagers, just pouring their hearts out every day for probably months. And I was only there for a couple days. So the passion and the time, the energy, just everything they pour into it, I was in awe. And so I'm so grateful I said yes to that, because that led me to see a side of what my son and his girlfriend do, but also to just see how something is created from the ground up was beautiful. And then being able to go back and, see the premiere of the movie with everyone and just reconnect with them. It was beautiful. And that opened me up into this season of yes and saying yes and no to things. I would say that is when I started to really take my writing even more seriously. And I ended up just kind of pouring myself into the creative process and editing and deciding what my first book was going to be like. And I started this journey into yes with my writing and with my publishing, always thinking that I needed a publisher and that I needed to be kind of discovered, and that whole wild idea that it needed to be someone else that was going to make me a published writer. And I realized not long after that I didn't need anyone to make me a writer, but also help me get published, that I could do that for myself. And that I just decided one day that, I'm going to start my own publishing company. And that's how I'm going to proceed. And I reached out to my kids, and I say kids, this is all my kids and their significant others, whether it's my son and his wife or my son and his girlfriend, my oldest son and his girlfriend. We have this group chat that's always going called The Kiddos. And I reached out to them and I just asked them, if you had to describe my writing, and they've been reading my writing in different ways. I've talked about my blog and, just things that I've shared online, whether it's poetry or a short story. So they've all been a part of reading the things that I write for a long time. But I said, if you had to describe my writing, how would you describe it? And my beautiful daughter-in-law, Jade, responded. They all responded. But this one hit me because I felt like it really was an insight into my heart of writing and in my passion for writing, but also in my passion for wanting other writers to be seen and, underrepresented writers especially. And this is what Jade said back. In this case, authors, she's quoting, let me start by saying that. In this case, authors rely on a lyrical narration, beautiful, inexplicable, and smooth. It is a story that never forgets it's a story, but still manages to sweep the reader away. Whimsical. It does, in effect, what soft magic does for a fantasy magical system. It recognizes the improbabilities, lets the reader in on some of the secrets, but is careful not to reveal the full of it, lest the magic of the show be ruined. And man, I tell you, my husband and I were sitting on the patio and I kind of lost it. And first of all, I think it's because our daughter-in-law Jade is just a quiet presence. She's very much the opposite of our son Nate in a beautiful way. And I think I always just never kind of knew what she was thinking. She's been thrust into a pretty crazy family here with these 3 boys and a wild Puerto Rican mother-in-law. And I think I just was never sure what she kind of thought about all of it. And that just threw me in the most beautiful way. I was just sitting on the patio crying, and my husband was like, what happened? And then I read it to him and he teared up. And again, like we said in our marriage podcast episode, he's the one who's kind of emotional more lately. And he was like, wow, I love that. He said, I just love that that's what she was thinking and that's what she feels about your writing. And it's spot on. And thus, my publishing company was birthed. I sat down, I wrote a business plan within probably a week, and I created a logo and picked a name, and I went online and I got my LLC for it, and thus Whimsical Wanderers Press was created. And I think that just stepping into this season of yes got me to that point. I think, listening to what my kids are doing and watching what they're doing and the way that they're creating these amazing lives for themselves and doing it with fearlessness and with passion just helped me to say yes to the things that I would never say yes to. I mean, starting this publishing company kind of gave me the fire to continue to work on my writing and editing and putting together what will be my first book. And it again opened up this creative part of my mind where I started to go down kind of rabbit holes that I never would have even thought about, like writing songs. I joke that, I want to write a song and, present it to Johnny Swim because they're one of my favorite duos. But that was always kind of a joke. And then I started writing lyrics, which to me is very similar to poetry. And songwriters are probably like, that's nothing like it is. But to me, that's how it felt. And things just started pouring out of me creatively that I never even knew were in there. And that's part of my season of yes. And recently, and totally by accident, I signed up for a writing course, and I had my first course this Tuesday, and it was amazing. Like, I was so anxious, and you get that kind of imposter syndrome, right? Like, I'm not a writer. I shouldn't be in a room with writers. And this was definitely a much more laid back writing course, within our community. But I still walked into this thinking, if I just sit there and take notes, that's fine. If I get nothing else out of it, at least I have somewhat of a basis to move forward in. And let me just say, like, I walked into that room and I could feel the energy it was a very beautiful energy, and that made me feel at ease. And that hour and a half went by like a flash. People were just opening up about things. The instructor was amazing. She was just really just not only knowledgeable, but just welcoming. And she was like, oh, if you thought you were just going to sit here and take notes, let me tell you, no, you came here to write a book. So we're going to make sure you're writing a book, and we're all going to conspire in each other's favor. And the first thing you need to remember is you're a writer, you're worth it, you're good, you're going to make this happen for yourself, and we're going to help you make it happen because you can do this. And I could just feel the love in that room, and I could feel the acceptance. And I knew leaving out of there that I was going to put this book out probably even sooner than before. I was kind of shooting for spring, and now I'm thinking maybe by the end of the year I could actually do this. I felt empowered. I felt like I'm being given tools, and even though we still have some classes left, I know that it's only going to get better from here. I left there buzzing. And this is what I wanted my season of yes to be. And I think originally I was like, oh, maybe this season of yes is a year, or I don't know, just a handful of times. But as time goes on, I'm seeing that this season of yes is maybe just forever. It's for the rest of my life. Like, I want to step into things that light a fire in me, that make me feel happy, that make me feel fulfilled. that make me feel that buzz every day. That even if it's scary, I know I can do it. And I think that, and I hope that, and I've heard that this is something that I gave to my kids, that I never wanted them to be scared like I was growing up. I wanted them to try things. I think I still hovered a lot because I was overprotective of them in a way, but I wanted them to try and to do things that pushed them outside of their comfort zones and propel them into their dreams realized. And I think it's finally my time to do the same. I'm excited to see what the future holds. I'm ready for what this next season and the season of yes is going to bring. I want to stretch myself. I want to do things that light me up and that make me happy, and surround myself with people who want the same for me and who are conspiring in my favor as well. I think that that's what my season of yes has been about. It's been just about going where I would never go before and allowing myself the grace to do it, even if it was scary. So, yes, that's what this episode is about. It's about wanting more for yourself and knowing that even if it's scary, it's going to be worth it. And I'm excited to see where it goes next for me. So here we are at the end. I'm sure I could talk about this for another hour, but I leave you with a couple questions. What season are you stepping into? And how does it serve you? I mean, if it's a season that's hard, we've all been there. We're all, humans, and we live this human experience where it's hard sometimes. We get that. And we have to honor those times too. But what season do you want to step into, maybe, is the better question. And secondly, what can you say yes to? And where can it lead you? I don't know. Maybe there's something you've always been afraid to try and you're thinking like I thought, oh, I'm getting older, I can't do this. But you can. And you should. So, yeah, I'll leave you with those questions. And I hope that everything that you say yes to brings you joy, brings you happiness, brings you abundance, and leads to more amazing things. Thank you so much for listening to the All in My Head podcast, and I will talk to you soon.